Chapter 8. Transportation. Congratulations, we have reached our final chapter of day 2. What happens when we put the batteries into vehicles? What happens when we bring the clean energy revolution, the energy transition, into the transportation sector? Batteries, just like wind and solar, turn out to have a learning curve. And in their case, the learning curve, based on data from the last 15 to 20 years, the learning curve of batteries looks like it's around 18%, well, specifically lithium-ion batteries. And what's really interesting is that in the early years, those price declines were actually driven by mobile phones, because lithium-ion batteries were what we used in the mobile revolution. That's why Tesla decided to use lithium-ion. So not only did the mobile revolution give us sensors and cameras and chips that have given us simulation and automation technologies, it turns out that the mobile revolution has also fed the transportation revolution. In more recent years, however, most of the battery price declines have been driven by electric vehicle production. This price decline also looks very likely to continue into the future. So on that 18% learning curve, looks like we're going to get down to about 100 kilowatts an hour. It looks like we're going to get down to about $100 per kilowatt hour by 2023. And that's the magical price point at which an electric vehicle becomes cost competitive with an internal combustion engine powered vehicle. We're already seeing many electric vehicles sold around the world. 2.1 million vehicles sold in 2019. That was 1/33 of all new vehicles. Now, while that's still only a fraction of the world's new vehicles sold, the number is increasing exponentially. So just 5 years ago, the number of electric vehicles sold annually was in the low few hundred thousands. Last year, there were about in 2018, there were about 1.5 million electric vehicles sold. So we're seeing the number increase exponentially, and cheaper batteries involved in the production of those electric vehicles have really expanded the market, which has then helped to drive costs even lower. So most of the price reductions now in batteries, in lithium-ion batteries, are now being driven by the manufacturing of electric vehicles. Most people think that the battery is the most disruptive piece of technology inside an electric vehicle. I mean, after all, it's what makes it electric, right? And while that's true to a certain extent, it's not just that it makes it electric, it's also that the battery is at the bottom of the vehicle. So the vehicle has a lower center of gravity, which creates better performance, and it also frees up space in the vehicle, so you have design freedoms. That's not actually the most disruptive part of an EV. To show you why I mean that, let me introduce you to the ultimate combustion engine. Say hello to the engine of the BMW M5. This thing is a masterpiece of complex engineering, a 1,200 piece puzzle that weighs around 200 kilograms. There are 150 moving parts alone within the drivetrain. It can catapult this car from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.3 seconds. It comes together from a web of hundreds of suppliers and many, many hands. What you're looking at here is process knowledge built up over more than a century. It is a pinnacle of engineering. This, as I said, is the ultimate combustion engine, as in the last of its kind. Because this is the drivetrain of the Tesla Model 3, and it only has 50 moving parts, and it weighs 30 kilograms, and it moves the car from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.1 seconds. And the reason for that is that because it's an electric vehicle, you don't need as many parts to actually move the car forward. So it weighs far less. That improves performance. And most importantly, it means that you don't have as many metal things rubbing on other metal things. And so the engine doesn't wear down as quickly. It turns out that the maintenance costs for an electric vehicle are pretty much negligible. As soon as you drive that vehicle out of the showroom, you don't really ever have to come back to the mechanic again. And maintenance costs account for around half of the overall cost of a vehicle. Most importantly, this drivetrain just makes these things better. Here is one of the world's most iconic sports cars, the Lamborghini Aventador, against a 5-seater family sedan. That's why this person is awarding their Model S 100 stars, 2 black holes, 5 supernovae, and an ever-expanding singularity of engorged luck dragons, and woo, shit yeah. It's not just the geeks that are excited. Here's the Wall Street Journal just a few days ago. Is Tesla's Model Y crossover the world's best car? It's a pretty good question, and the reason is not just because of performance, but also because of the software that's inside it. About 12 months ago, a group of Toyota mechanics decided to do a strip down on the Tesla Model 3, and what they found inside really confused them. There were a number of components and parts, they said, that they actually couldn't figure out. They didn't know what the function was for. In their words, they said that they could not build a car like this. They said Tesla is about 6 years ahead of all the automotive companies. What particularly baffled them was this device. This is Tesla's artificial intelligence chips, which it manufactures for itself. And so what's different about Tesla compared to all the other big automobile companies is that Tesla manufactures almost all of its components in-house. So Tesla contains all of the process knowledge on how to manufacture all of the components in its car, because it had to design its car from scratch. No one had ever really built commercially viable electric vehicles before. And so Tesla's supply chain and the way that they operate, get their parts, the way they assemble their cars, it's totally different to all of the big car companies. That's why all the big car companies are now having to scramble to retrofit and completely change the way in which they make their vehicles. But the problem with Tesla is that it's got a 5, 6, 7 year head start. That's why Tesla is valued so highly. And also, these chips eventually will hopefully be able to, what these chips do is they allow Tesla to be able to provide software updates. So really, the company thinks of their cars as computers on wheels. They don't think of them as cars with computers inside of them. They think of them as computers with wheels. And remember the 000 business model, where you can embed software into objects and you can update the software constantly? It was the third zero latency of updating. Well, that's what Tesla is doing over here. They've put data at the forefront of their strategy, and that means that their cars can improve over time. Tesla, though, aren't the only disruptive electric vehicle company. This is BYD, based out of Shenzhen in China. And a few years ago, they took this electric bus to a bus conference in Belgium. It was in about 2011. And their CEO said that everybody laughed at them. They looked at these things and they said, those are very cute. Maybe we'll use them in Disneyland, but we're not going to see changes anytime soon. Fast forward to 2019, and Shenzhen had managed to electrify its entire bus fleet, all 16,000 buses operating in the city. Now, just to put that into perspective, that bus fleet is 3 times larger than the largest bus fleet in the United States, New York's. And following the success of that project, China is now rolling out an electric bus fleet the size of London's every 5 weeks. At the rate that they're going right now, it looks like around half of the world's buses are going to be electric by 2025. Electric vehicles aren't just cars, they're buses and scooters and vans as well. And already there are about half a million electric buses around the world, around 400,000 electric delivery vans and trucks, and 184 million electric scooters, mopeds, and motorcycles. Electric trucks are on their way as well. This is a fully electric Isuzu NRR. It's been retrofitted, and the vehicle has an operating range of about 350 kilometers. And these are Mercedes' new electric vehicles. That's a long-distance heavy-duty truck. It's Class 8. That's the most popular kind of truck, an 18-wheeler in the United States. The big one has about a 250-mile range and was designed for regional transportation and port services. 80% of all freight that travels around the world is transported less than 250 miles. So these trucks don't need to actually travel long distances before they need to get charged again. This is Volvo's new electric-powered dump truck. And this is Volvo's rubbish collecting truck. They use these in a number of European cities already. And municipalities love these things because mayors in cities around the world are usually tied. They can't really do much about climate change. Climate change is normally something that happens at the federal level. It's driven by national governments. But mayors of cities do have control over one thing, which is municipal transportation. And so what we're seeing in hundreds of cities around the world is that the mayors are now deciding to build and to buy electric vehicles and install charging infrastructure. It's the one area where mayors and city officials really can move the dial. And of course, how could we not mention the Tesla Semi? This is a Tesla Semi prototype that was spotted at a California Highway Patrol inspection center probably about 8 months ago. And the driver of that vehicle said that the concrete blocks that are on there, those were for testing purposes. The truck is operating at around 30,000 kilograms, and it's meeting or exceeding the range estimates of around 1,000 kilometers. Just keep that in mind when people tell you that the trucks can't ever be electric. Here's an electric digger out of Sweden that has an operating time of around 6 hours. And here is the largest electric vehicle in the world. It operates in a quarry in Biel, Switzerland. It's a 110-ton dump truck, and it hauls lime and marl off the side of the mountain to a cement factory. You know what the best thing about this truck is, though? Is it doesn't consume any energy doing that. How's that possible? How is that possible, you ask? Well, the dump truck itself weighs 45 tons. So it starts at the bottom of the hill and it ascends the 13% grade in the quarry, and then it takes on 65 tons of ore. With more than double the weight of the original truck going back down the hill. What that means is that this beast's regenerative braking system recaptures more than enough energy to refill the charge that the e-dumper used going back up. Who said that there's no such thing as perpetual motion? The regulatory environment is changing as well. In the last 2 years, petrol and diesel bans have spread across Europe. But, you know, we would expect this kind of thing from Europeans. Bunch of lefty, greeny, environmentalist, tree-hugging hippies. Well, did you know that a number of other countries, such as Israel, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Costa Rica, have also announced bans? And China, the largest car market in the world, accounting for around 40% of global car sales, are mulling an internal combustion engine ban by as soon as 2035. In fact, around the world, 13 countries have now announced plans to phase out sales of internal combustion vehicles, and more than 31 different cities and regions. The other thing that's happening, and again, these are small regulatory changes that you don't often hear about in the news, but the International Code Council, which has the building standards that are used in more than 50 countries around the world, now says in their new guidelines that all new homes should be EV ready, that the wiring for any new homes that are built should be able to charge an electric vehicle. What's also interesting is that we're starting to see the infrastructure built out to support electrification too. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, the world's 1 millionth public electric vehicle outlet will start powering cars. And as part of Germany's new coronavirus stimulus package, gas stations will now be required to provide charging for electric vehicles as part of the $130 billion that the government is going to be spending. The government is also increasing its subsidy for electric vehicles by €3,000 to a total of €6,000 for cars costing less than €40,000. So if you are thinking about buying an electric vehicle that costs less than €40,000, $6,000 will be paid for by the German government. Things can change quick. Here are all of the media companies piling into Tesla less than a decade ago. And as you can see, they've all now changed their tune. This is why all the big car companies are piling in. Ford, the company that bought us the production line, the company that pioneered large-scale automobile manufacturing. Here's Bill Ford Jr. Electric vehicles, oh yeah, no, we are all in. Dieter Zetsche, the former head of Mercedes-Benz, there is no alternative to betting on electric cars. It is starting right now. And that, by the way, is the most European-looking man I have ever seen. Porsche, we will be 100% electric by 2030. Even our most iconic car, the 911, will be electric. Rolls-Royce, here's their CEO. Rolls-Royce will become an all-electric brand within the next 10 years. That is one of the most iconic companies, car companies in the world. And here's another iconic car company. Ferrari. By 2022, 60% of our models will have hybrid powertrains. And their CEO, Louis Camilleri, looking super stoked about that one. Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, says that we are in the midst of seeing more change in the next 5 years in the car industry than we've seen in the last 50. Here she is at the recent launch of General Motors' new electric platform that happened earlier this year. The company is investing $20 billion into electrification by 2025, and 10 electric models will go on sale next year. That includes 3 Cadillacs, 2 Buicks, 3 Chevrolets, and 2 versions of this car. The biggest electric vehicle bet anywhere on the planet, though, is from this company, VW, the largest car company in the world. $44 billion of investment planned into electric vehicles over the next 15 years, over the next decade. 40% electric vehicles by 2030, and they'll be 100% carbon neutral by 2050. This is a single company that accounts for 1% of global carbon emissions on its own. That's 1% of global carbon emissions sorted. The first big shot across the bow by Volkswagen has been the retooling of their Zweigberg factory in Germany. This was $1.2 billion of conversion. They had to completely retool the factory. It wasn't just about reconfiguring and retooling either. They had to retrain all of the technicians in that factory. They hope that they'll be producing around 360,000 electric vehicles a year by the end of 2020. Here is VW's Tesla killer. It's called the ID.3, and it was unveiled at the Frankfurt Motor Show in around October last year. This is a small little city vehicle. It has a range of about 400 kilometers. It charges in the space of less than half an hour, and it has the performance of a GTI, but it's about the size of a Polo. Here's that car in action. And what I really love about this shot is actually not the car itself, it's that charger. That charger is owned by a European charging network called Ionity, but the charger itself is made by a company in Brisbane, Australia. The company is called Tritium, and it was started by a group of 3 friends about 10 years ago who saw where the puck was going and decided to skate there. Their charger is the most powerful and most in-demand electric vehicle charger anywhere on the planet. They now cannot keep up with demand. From scratch 10 years ago, they now employ more than 450 people in their Brisbane headquarters, and 95% of their product is exported. So let's go back to where we started at the beginning of this afternoon. You remember this quote from the great 20th century engineer Buckminster Fuller? You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. The clean energy revolution is the biggest technological challenge in human history. It doesn't come bigger than this. But the good news is that there are millions of people around the world who are working flat out to try and solve that problem. Millions of incredible human beings who are bringing their ingenuity, their savvy, their creativity, and their human skills to try and solve this issue before it's too late. Millions of people who want to build a better future. And millions of people who want their buckies to be able to do this.
How old were you when you started the company?
26.
And you were like, I'm going to start a car company?
Yeah. How does this thing accelerate to 60 miles an hour faster than almost every Ferrari ever made? That's not an accident. That's super intentional technology that's been woven together into the vehicle. It's a business with a very low probability of success. You need 1,000 engineers, you need hundreds of suppliers, you need a really tight market position. Your first dollar of real revenue comes after spending $3 billion. We're living right now in a really weird state, leveraging sources of energy that accumulated on our planet for 200-300 million years. We as humanity, in less than 150 years, have used more than half of it. It's simply not a choice to move off of fossil fuels. The wrong answer is to tell people that want SUVs and trucks that they have to drive really small electric cars. The right answer is to say, drive the vehicle that you want. Oh, by the way, this now has a path to carbon zero. The goal is to build an adventure-oriented vehicle and rethink the truck and SUV space. I grew up as a kid enamored by and just loving cars. I started to realize that these things that I loved were really damaging the planet, which was also something I loved. You know, when we started the company, it was just me. Within 6 months, there was 5 or 6 others.
Us being a smaller group, we were really close.
We all have friends and family asking, what do you do? It was like, I can tell you, it's secret. Like, no, that's not a real company. You're not working.
And they're like, all right, yeah. Do you need lunch money?
The initial focus was a sports car. I began to realize that that was not right.
We've been doing this for 2 years. We're really excited. And this is kind of RJ in a nutshell. He's like, yeah, but I've been thinking about it and I don't think this is a big enough vision. We could do better.
What is Rivian?
I don't know if you've ever heard the term BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goal. This is a BHAG.
The technology doesn't exist for technology's sake. The technology exists to do things that currently are not possible.
We actually have a 400-mile range, so this range anxiety goes away.
We have a skateboard platform that we sit different vehicles on top.
The secret sauce.
A good modular design that is scalable.
Gave us the opportunity to provide technology to other manufacturers and players in the industry.
It's one of the most complex products on the planet in terms of the amount of compute platform, software layers, drive system.
It's like a living organism. The pieces all have to interoperate really closely together.
We've taken very much a clean sheet approach.
Don't look at other cars, what they're doing.
Because if you keep doing things the same way, you will always get the same result.
Every bolt and every component is geared towards optimizing for a great electric vehicle experience.
Starting fresh allowed us to pick state-of-the-art components from the get-go.
It's all new technology. We're developing a brand new battery.
We can give you more energy, more range, more power.
All you're going to hear is the wheels on the dirt as you're driving through the open expanse. When a customer's going to drive this car for the first time, I think there will be a, shit, this is fast. But I feel in control to ascend and descend some unbelievable terrains. It's got sports car level performance on the road, but then to have the level of off-road capability with that is something that's never been done before. There's a massive transformation coming.
I've never said this out loud, but what used to bother me the most was not building something successful and all of what I was doing just being another source of wasted carbon. It motivated me to say, all right, I better make this work. We've hired the best people in the world from a bunch of different industries.
Before Rivian, I was at McLaren.
Netflix, Intel.
Almost 4 great years at Tesla.
I was very lucky to lead the groups that created Wi-Fi, the iMac. I started the iPhone project.
I think I have my name on maybe close to 100 patents.
Everyone has different ways of looking at things, different experiences. I spend most of my emotional energy getting really capable, really smart people to work together. When you're innovating, it tends to drive some level of friction, which isn't necessarily bad.
Sometimes courage is a bit of, oh, I'm courageous, are you courageous? Let's push together.
How's your day been so far?
It's been intense. I told RJ the lights are ugly, and he said, don't worry, they grow on you.
Seeing something grow from literally 30 people in a garage to this 2,000 people plus company with sites all over the world, it's just mind-blowing.
How many square feet is this factory?
It's 2.6 million square feet.
The first vehicle will roll off the assembly line at the end of 2020.
We have the will, the drive, and the facilities to do it.
We got to deliver. There's just no alternative.
Do whatever you want to do with this vehicle. Bash on it, trash on it, get it dirty. Go exploring and have something that's good for the planet.
The product's amazing, but those experiences are eternal. That's what really motivates us all at the end of the day.
The longer we take to switch off fossil fuels, the greater risk we put on the likelihood of life surviving on this planet. When you know exactly how close you are to the edge, it's my coping mechanism to focus on how right it would be when we pull it off.